turn my camera on so that you see me. Hello there. We wait a couple of more minutes to see if anybody else will join, and then we'll start. Do you hear me loud and clear? I hope so. Cool. I just got a confirmation that I'm being heard. And we wait a couple of more minutes, say 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll slowly start. So guys, let's kick this off. My name is Stoyan Chalakov. I'm MVP, Microsoft MVP in Cloud and Data Center, and also a senior IT consultant in Switzerland, and also a partner at a very nice and very skilled consulting company called Pon IT Consulting. Today we're going to be talking about monitoring and actually about Microsoft's monitoring to System Center Operations Manager, and especially we'll cover how SCOM compared to other monitoring tools, what's the future of SCOM, what we could await in near future from Microsoft about SCOM, and some other interesting stuff. Before we start, thank you for joining the session, and also keep in mind that since May, as I have prepared the session, there were some updates in the area of SCOM, and actually those updates were presented at the SCOMathon event in May this year, and they are concerning, of course, SCOM and SCOM's future. So we'll try to mention also those updates which are coming actually directly from the SCOM product group. Without further ado, let's take a look at the agenda. After a short intro, we'll just mention or say a couple of words about the past of SCOM. This is, of course, important if we are going to talk about the future. So let's see what the past of SCOM was. And then we will say a couple of words about SCOM versus other monitoring tools or versus today's monitoring tools. And we'll see how SCOM is being compared to those monitoring tools. Of course, we're going to talk about the place of SCOM in today's monitoring world and say a couple of words about its future. Before we move to discussing the place of SCOM in today's monitoring world, or have a word about its future, we need to look at the past. Since the first version I have worked with SCOM is 2002 R2, I think I'm not entitled to talk about it that much. So what I would do here is to leave this to a famous SCOM expert who covered this exact topic during last year's SCOMathon keynote session. And we are talking here about Cameron Fuller. So if you would like to hear more about the past of SCOM, please do watch Cameron's session where he thoroughly explains how SCOM has evolved through the year, going from 2007 to 2012, then R2, and then how it has been, let's say, converted to Azure monitoring tool or to log analytics or OMS or also the other direction, which it has been developed to SCOM 2016, of course, the on-premise tool, and how it compares to Azure Monitor. It's a very interesting session, and I would just encourage you to take a look at it. There is also a webinar hosted by a couple of renowned SCOMers, which is also touching this topic. This was back in 2020. And I think you most probably, if you're doing monitoring or no SCOM, then you have most probably heard about all of those guys. And those are, of course, Bob Cornelissen, aka SCOM Bob. There is Bruce from Squared Up. There is also John Joyner, and Cameron is also there. Really great experts with huge knowledge in SCOM. So please take a look at this also. Continuing, let's talk about the present. After mentioning the long history of SCOM, it is time to turn to the present and compare it to other monitoring tools. I have to tell you that I have done an extensive research. I have analyzed tons of comparisons, reviews, and comments on various platforms like, for example, Gartner, Google Trends, different other sites and blogs which are comparing monitoring tools. I won't go into great details here on which tool does exactly what better, but I would like to try to explain you the results in an overview or in a summary. The first thing I noticed is that SCOM, or System Center Operations Manager, is being often compared to tools such as Grafana, Splunk, or even VMware. And although those are also monitoring tools in a certain way, they do not have the same architecture, functionalities, or purpose as SCOM. It is so comparing those to SCOM, it's almost like comparing, let's say, apples to oranges, because both are different types of fruits, but they have different characteristics and they're used for different purposes. That's exactly also the same way here with SCOM. For example, this, not that VMware cannot do this well. It is just a specific use case if you're using VMware as hypervisor. What you see here is actually somebody tried to compare SCOM to VMware or to some other tool, and it's really not a fair comparison. So another thing I've noticed going to the different ratings is that those are often based on reviews which are subject to interpretations. What I mean by that? There is a trend when it comes to comparisons, and I noticed that many of the discussed downsides have been either taken out of context or are not simply true. And this is exactly the subjective factor of the evaluation. So, as you see here, oftentimes alerts are false positives. Actually, from all the monitoring tools that I have worked with, SCOM is one of the tools which has the least amount of false positives. It's very rare that SCOM really reports a false positive alert compared to other tools. So what you see here is a very good example of how personal interpretations or personal opinion influences a fair comparison. Also, the product has a lot of manual setup that has to be done in order to monitor some Microsoft products, which in my opinion should be done out of the box or with less effort. So this particular opinion is a dislike, and also judging by the context of the words, I would say this, in my opinion, this is not true. SCOM, and especially for Windows monitoring, we all know that's really a true story. Microsoft and SCOM, in particular, is the best in Windows monitoring. But monitoring Microsoft products is such an easy thing. Everybody who does SCOM knows that you need only an agent and a management pack which is actually pre-configured. So this is one of the most simple things in SCOM. So again, this comes to show us how a personal opinion or personal experience with the product could influence a fair comparison. The same also here, not compared in any way out of the box and really takes a long time to implement meaningful alerting. Let's put it this way. It is configured out of the box because you have all the management packs which are pre-configured. That's the truth. The other part of the statement, it takes a long time to implement meaningful alerting. It could be subject to interpretations. It could be that you need to fine-tune some stuff. Yes, there are lots of monitors when you use Microsoft management packs, especially for Exchange, let's say a SQL Server, Active Directory, which needs some tuning. But this is applicable to each environment and to almost every monitoring tool that is out there. You need to tune your monitoring to your environment. Further, before jumping to what makes SCOM a great tool, let's shortly check on its alleged downsides. What I would like to show you with an example is that those are also often subjective. So, what are the downsides of SCOM according to reviews in the different sites where monitoring tools are compared? So, let's start with this one, costs. Here, the research showed that users are differentiating between licensing and also operational costs, but are mostly unhappy with the licensing costs. Then again, according to Gartner, the majority of the users are actually considering this a plus and not a downside. So you see on the right side here on the screenshot that they are there are statements like it's more expensive than the competition. But again, if you have licenses for other Microsoft products like other System Center components, SCCM, and stuff like this, then you don't have to worry about licensing. So this again comes to serve as this statement is actually subjective. So the next thing being mentioned often is complexity. I admit that you cannot become a SCOM expert without or within a couple of days. And let's face it, you cannot have simple enterprise-grade monitoring covering your whole infrastructure like Windows, Linux, network devices, etc., etc. It just cannot be simple if it has to be an enterprise-grade stuff. There is certain degree of complexity if you want in-depth monitoring of your IT landscape. Last but not least, we have the UI topic. You cannot have a simple UI and achieve great details and visibility with it. Let's be honest here. If you want enterprise-grade monitoring, you need to have some complexity bound to it, and this applies also for the UI and also for different views and stuff that there is out there. This is always a matter of compromise. And here, a personal opinion, and actually it's not just a personal opinion, but this is observation of many SCOM users. Yes, we know and we agree and admit that the console SCOM, the current version of it, it's not the best or the most modern looking one. But it allows you to cover all your daily monitoring tasks. And of course, if you strive for better visualization, better reporting, stuff like this, there are plenty of additional solutions which you can use in order to cover this topic. So we continue talking about the present of SCOM. We mentioned already that there is a subject factor when doing comparison. So in order to back up my statement about the relativity of those comparisons, I would like to give you an example here. And the example is actually the comparison between SCOM and Splunk, which you see here on the screen. As you see on the left side, we have a comparison from Gartner, where both tools have the same scores. And on the right side, you see a screenshot from a technical blog. This one, I mean, which presents the same comparison, but with somewhat different results. And here again comes what my message to you is. Your monitoring tool should meet your requirements, but it's not always necessary. There is no tool to rule them all. There is no single tool which covers all technologies across all platforms, which does everything the best. And I personally think that comparison of SCOM and Splunk is a very unfair thing, mainly because, like we already mentioned, Splunk is not the typical monitoring tool. It starts as a log collection tool, right? And it's the most probably the best one on the market for this. But then when we move to the next level, monitoring and the way SCOM does it, especially in the Windows world, you cannot compare it with Splunk. Yes, Splunk has its, of course, its positive sides, but it also a lot of other stuff which could influence your Windows monitoring. Like, for example, costs, licensing costs are huge and stuff. I'm not implying that Splunk is bad. Not. I'm actually a big fan of Splunk, but let's face it, comparison between both two, it's not a fair thing to do. So moving forward, let's see what the place of SCOM is. It's actually, so after all those reviews and comparison, the actual place of SCOM in today's world, what is it? Let us see why there are so many people who are passionate about SCOM. Why SCOM gathers a crowd so large on many events and also on all platforms, and of course, why is there such a big community? So you see the official rating of SCOM based on all the reviews compared to other Microsoft IT infrastructure, actually compared to other IT infrastructure monitoring tools. And despite all the remarks we made in the previous slides, SCOM scores so high that it is really ranked amongst the top IT infrastructure monitoring tools in today's enterprise monitoring tools landscape. So I'm not here to prove you that SCOM is the best of all, because I cannot do that. I just want to show you that some things are a matter of perspective. What you might find as a drawback might be considered actually as an advantage to someone else. So again, this is the subjective factor of doing such comparisons. All right. So continuing with the place in SCOM in today's monitoring world, we need to have a look at the so-called BigSCOM Survey, which is being conducted every year by Squared Up and their partners, and where also the Microsoft product group is participating. So what we saw in the results of the last survey in 2021 is that although SCOM is still considered great, its Net Promoter Score, or also NPS score, has dropped from 36 in 2020 to 31 in 2021. Why is this the case? Let's try to shed some light on this with our next slide. So, why are people considering reducing the usage of SCOM? So the majority of participants expect their SCOM use to grow over the next year. However, in comparison to 2020, a bigger proportion of users expect their SCOM usage actually to reduce. Why is there such a trend? What are the reasons behind this? In order to answer those questions, let us look at the 2021 summary. So What we see here is a very interesting trend where most users are reducing their SCOM usage because they either think it has insufficient cloud monitoring capabilities or are simply replacing it with Azure monitoring. And here we certainly see a very hot topic emerging, the lack of container monitoring. This is certainly a factor which should not be neglected. So I do hope that we will see some action around this in the near future in the SCOM area. Believe me, I know there is some things going on in this particular area, but let's be surprised in the near future. I personally was very surprised about this one. SCOM's future is unclear. If you have watched last year's different session around SCOM, on the SCOMathon events, or also on different other events, then you have certainly heard that SCOM 2022 is coming, which is already a fact. And now, just a year later, this is a fact. So SCOM 2022 has been officially announced a couple of months ago, and I would encourage you to watch the SCOM roadmap session, which has been presented in May this year by Ankur, who is a part of the SCOM product group, because it covers lots of details about the SCOM's roadmap. And if you take a short sneak peek at it, then you know that they have promised us a minimum of 10 years more support for SCOM, and not even more. So the rest of the numbers I would attribute to certain standard processes, like users are trying and experimenting with different tools and technologies, something which is absolutely normal. And before going further and touch a sensitive topic, cloud monitoring, let us pay credits to SCOM by mentioning some of its major strengths. So it is fact, nobody does this better than SCOM, Microsoft and Microsoft workloads and operating systems. All the surveys, all the reviews and comments state absolutely the same, and this is simply undisputable. So what helps here also is the concept of management packs, something I'm personally a very, very huge fan of. I read somewhere that community is one of its weaknesses after reading all the comparisons. So not true, guys. Just look at the number of SCOMathon attendees, the attendees in the different events which are covering SCOM. Look at all the free management packs that have been built by the countless SCOM enthusiasts. And also the documentation is getting better each day. We also try to contribute there. We, the community, are doing this. So this stuff you cannot find in the official Microsoft documentation. For this stuff, there are a lot of other sources which are covering this. And you will certainly find information in one of the countless System Center related blogs that are out there. I'm so involved in that I can easily say that SCOM's community is very, very strong and very, very powerful, including all the different help or support platforms like Microsoft Q&A, where almost no questions related to SCOM remains unanswered. If we talk about extensibility and management packs authoring in particular, there are tools that can help you extend your monitoring by authoring new management packs, like, for example, Select MP Author, Kevin Holman's management pack fragments, which you can just use, replace some stuff, and get your things monitored. And of course, you can always use PowerShell in order to extend SCOM. It is something which I'm personally a fan of, and I'm doing this also. For example, simple tasks where you don't have a management pack for this, I just take the PowerShell management pack, PowerShell authoring management pack, create a simple script with PowerShell, integrate it with SCOM, and there I have my monitoring. So, and it's not a surprise that we see such responses more often. So, looks like Microsoft is finally giving more love to SCOM again, and customers feel that. So new technologies and a consolidation of monitoring toolsets are coming. SCOM is by far the easiest to integrate with ServiceNow. This is also a fact because of the different solutions that they are out there for integrating, because of APIs which are now available with SCOM. So this comes to state that we really see that the Microsoft product group is striving to further develop the tool, to optimize, and to hear what users are actually saying. So you see, there are different ways to extend SCOM with third-party products like SquaredUp, Select, Cookdown, etc., etc. So this also comes to show that the ecosystem of SCOM is really huge. So far, we talked about what SCOM does very well and how and actually what it's good at. And now let's see what is actually missing. What are the features that would make it most probably the best monitoring tool? According to the BigSCOM survey, there are a couple of requirements in SCOM that needs addressing. Here is a summary of the most desired features, if we can call it this way. A modern UI is something users want for a long, long time, and actually they have it. There are certain solutions which will equip your management group with a nice modern looking front end. Users are shouting for more flexible reporting. We need, or we all know that this is not the strongest side of SCOM, although we have some current predefined reports extending those to have something custom. It's not that easy. It's a pretty complex task. So the next thing is anomaly detection and forecasting. And this is truly a certain drawback of SCOM, but I'm pretty sure the Microsoft product group has already recognized this and is putting they are putting their efforts in addressing this particular downside of SCOM, and I hope really to see something or some development in this particular area in the near future. Of course, we already mentioned container monitoring. As I already said, there are certain things going on in this particular area, and I really hope that there is actually already, if I'm not mistaken, a management pack by OpsLogix, which covers this particular topic. So it's not for Microsoft directly, but if you really need this, you can go and get a solution which is already out there, which will help you monitoring your Kubernetes environment. And last but not least, alert correlation to suppress alert storms when dependent components are down. So this was for a long time a downside of SCOM, but if you have watched last year's edition of HackerSCOM, then you know that there Kevin Holman, I don't need to say who Kevin Holman in the SCOM world is. He developed a solution which actually stops all the alerting in case, for example, a gateway server is down. So if in your environment you have a gateway with many, many, many agents behind it, usually what happens if the gateways go down, all the monitoring components on those agents will be alerting and will be dropping critical alerts. And now what you can do is take Kevin's management pack, import it, and then in case your gateways go down, automatically all the objects behind the gateway will be placed in maintenance mode until your gateway gets back online. So take a look at Kevin's management pack. It's really something which is worth trying out. And this is one more evidence of the fact that there is a lot going on in the community and that actual issues or current issues are being addressed. So if you look at this compared to last year's result, we will see clearly a steep increase in users asking for more cloud monitoring and better Azure monitoring integration. It's clearly visible on the site how the numbers look like in both years, so 2022 compared to 2021, and particularly this increase or this demand for more cloud monitoring. This is the thing I'm talking about. Better Azure monitor integration, also a very huge topic for SCOM and actually for every monitoring tool that is out there. So we're all asking, what about cloud native or hybrid cloud monitoring? And although we have the Azure Monitoring Management Pack, the Office 365 management packs, and the alliance between SCOM and Azure Monitor, there are some important requirements that need addressing. And I have already been defining different inputs to the Microsoft System Center product group about this. And let's see what are actually the wishes of the community. So for customers who have made significant investments in SCOM, to achieve comprehensive monitoring, such solution would have to be able to allow the usage of SCOM management packs, thus retaining their existing investments. So the other thing, what the users require is they want to reduce the effort to manage the monitoring infrastructure itself. Something we already mentioned is the support for container-based deployments. And of course, support for migration from on-premise to Azure. So I left the Azure integration for the last, and it was there the whole time, because this comes to show that this integration with Azure, SCOM and Azure, through a modern user interface is one of the most required features that is out there. So, and here we go. I saved actually the good news for almost the end. The most common requirements have been already acknowledged by the System Center product group. And the only thing we need to do right now is to have a tiny bit of patience. The product group implied this year's in May that they are working on a product which comes to cover all the previously seen requirements. So what we are expecting from them, or let's say the rumors are that we will have a product which is tightly integrated with Azure, which will have a cool new user interface, which will most probably ease the burden of administering or maintaining your infrastructure, and which will cover a lot of other current requirements which are out there in regards to SCOM. And this being said, we can conclude that we need to be a bit more patient and wait for those guys to get their job done, and we need to stay tuned a little bit more in order to await the good news and the new products which are out there in SCOM. And let's not forget, of course, that besides SCOM 2020-2022, which is out there, we will most probably see also discontinuation of the product, so future versions of SCOMs, SCOM aligned to the Windows Server releases, as it has been in the last couple of years, which is also, of course, great for all the customers which cannot go to the cloud for some reason. So we will still have the on-premise continuation of the product. We will have most probably a new product, which will be some kind of integration with Azure Monitor. And there is a lot of exciting news to come in this area. This being said, guys, it's time for questions. And if somebody has a question, I would be glad to answer it. Hope it was interesting for you to get some, let's say, some insight information about monitoring generally in the Microsoft area. I'm all ears. And if not, then guys, thank you for your valuable time. Thank you for being there. I wish you a great weekend and see you soon, hopefully. Bye, guys.